Good evening. Thanks for joining us tonight. The man charged in the double murder of his mother and stepfather in Oconto County was convicted today.
29-year-old David Steinmetz pleaded no contest in court and now faces the possibility of a life sentence. In a First Alert update, Jason Zimmerman was at the hearing and breaks down what was said.
It was back in October of 2022 that 55-year-old Lori Brennan and her 75-year-old husband Paul Brennan were found shot outside their house in the 1200 block of Melissa Boulevard in Little Suamico. Days later, Lori's son David Steinmetz was arrested, telling law enforcement something triggered him and a voice kept telling him to take a life or his life would be taken.
Is that information in the complaint, given the serious, grave nature of these charges? Is the information in the complaint truthful and accurate?
Yes, it's accurate.
According to the criminal complaint, Steinmetz had a contemptuous relationship with his mother and stepfather and wasn't a stranger to law enforcement. Prior to the shooting, Steinmetz confessed to using meth and doing tweaker stuff.
And what is your plea to count 2 first-degree intentional homicide?
Guilty. No contest. No contest.
And so your pleas to both counts 1 and 2 are no contest, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Steinmetz with the plea faces a life sentence, and the defense is expected to ask that he's eligible for early release and supervision after serving at least 20 years behind bars. A charge of possessing a firearm as a felon could be considered in making that determination. Steinmetz will be sentenced on February 20th. Until then, he will remain in custody. Reporting in Oconto, Jason Zimmerman, Action 2 News.